Welcome to the AMEC webinar on how to win an AMEC Award in 30 minutes. We're aiming to give you as many tips and tricks as we possibly can in 30 minutes so that we can help you succeed in this year's AMEC Awards in Prague in May. My name's Carly Sakis. I'm the Chief Insights Officer at Isentia, and I'm the Chair of the AMEC APAC Chapter, as well as an AMEC board member. I'm here today with Nari Crawford. She is the Head of Insights in New Zealand at Isentia and Chair of the AMEC Young Leaders Committee. Welcome, Nari, and thank you for joining me tonight. We're both joining you from the Asia Pacific part of the world. I'm sitting in Melbourne today, where it's 44 degrees, and Nari's joining from Wellington. Today in our webinar, we wanted to cover a few really important aspects of how to get you really ready for your AMEC entries and how to make sure that we're giving you the best advice for what we've learned over the years on how to actually approach that process. So today we'll cover key information about the awards process and categories, top tips for Company of the Year awards, top tips for client project entries, a Gold Award case study, which is coming to us from a New Zealand case study that has been very successful in previous awards, and we've also compiled some hints from the judges to really help you succeed this year. I wanted to start today by really encouraging everyone to have a go in the AMEC Awards, because it really is a wonderful process to see the work of analysts and researchers and insights companies and PR companies around the world celebrate all of our hard work and all of the success that we've achieved throughout the year. It's an amazing night, and it's a wonderful event that the industry holds to celebrate our success and all of that hard work. So as you can see here, we have many winners from many parts of the world, and we really want you to be a part of it this year in Prague, and we want you to really encourage you to get an entry in, no matter how small the project is. They are often the most innovative and the most creative and the most impactful. Please have a go and join us in Prague so that we can celebrate our successes and all of the hard work this year. Wanted to take you through some really important information. The important dates for you to remember are the early bird entry deadline, which is the 15th of February, the final entry deadline, which is the 1st of March. The shortlisting will be announced on the 5th of April, and then the final winners will be announced at the awards ceremony on the 23rd of May. Really important to, if you haven't got your entries in great shape right now, it's really important to actually work backwards from those key dates and make sure that you've actually got the right processes and systems and people in your organization dedicated to producing those entries. I know that there's a number of years where Isentia can admit that we've left it to the last minute, and it really isn't advisable. Lots of coffee has powered some of our award entries in previous years, but it really is much better if you take a planned approach and a targeted approach to what you're putting forward. There's some fantastic new categories this year as a result of some of the AMEC board members reviewing the existing categories in a way to continually innovate and improve the awards activities that AMEC runs. Firstly, there's a Best Newcomer in Emerging Markets. And this award recognises newer measurement companies reflecting growth, innovation and promotion of smaller markets. So a really, really important one, because there are so many different companies and members in AMEC, and it's very, very important that everybody demonstrates success and has the ability to actually enter in and show the success and the hard work that's being done in emerging markets. Secondly, there's a new category and award for a Step Change Award for the Best Improvement of a Measurement Journey. And this award recognises the improvement of how an organisation has used measurement and evaluation, increasing the level of sophistication and using measurement and evaluation to improve either their own or their clients' communication performance. And this is really to align with our maturity mapper work that we've done as an organisation, but also to recognise that the measurement process is a journey and not all projects start off as complex as they end up. And we need to actually celebrate the success and the work being done for the journey rather than just the final destination. Lastly, for our new award categories is the Plain English Award for Simplicity in Campaign Effectiveness Measurement and Reporting. And this is a rewording of an existing category, but it's really about awarding the ability to actually be concise and clear and direct in making recommendations to the end client. So very best wishes for everyone for those new categories. I think they're an exciting way forward for AMEC and offer some great opportunities come May. One of the biggest parts of the AMEC Award changes is to the Company of the Year Award. And this is a very welcomed change. This means that there will be 3 Company of the Year prizes. And I'd like to just highlight 2 changes here. One is that there is a large Company of the Year, mid-sized Company of the Year, and small-sized Company of the Year category. That's the first point to really take notice of and make sure that you're entering in the right categories. The second big change here is that it doesn't have to be a company that enters into these awards. It could actually be an in-house team within a larger organisation. So please read the details carefully and give that a go. There's also the changes to the criteria for the Company of the Year Award that we believe makes it much easier to put an entry forward and to put a compelling story forward in front of the judges. Just going to quickly go through some tips and tricks for the Company of the Year entry. And this is based on our experience over the last 4 years. Isentia has been honoured with Company of the Year for the last 4 years. And it's something that we've learned a lot about how to do this award along the way. The first thing that we learned pretty early on is to get your whole company involved with the entry. The entry needs financial data, it needs thought leadership data, it needs marketing information. You need to work as a whole business to bring the entry together to tell the most compelling story. So get your whole company involved. Make sure that you're giving your stakeholders in your organisation plenty of time to get back to you with the information because they won't all appreciate the deadlines that we're working under. The second tip is spend a lot of time thinking about the best way to tell your story, your company or your team's story. Every company has a really unique way that they have evolved and grown. Please think about how to tell your story and what's special about your story. The third point is to include external and internal campaigns and highlights. In the first year that we entered it, we really focused on the external, so what people could see externally. And then the next couple of times we entered in it, we really talked about how we'd raised awareness internally about AMEC, about the measurement framework and all sorts of initiatives. So don't forget those internal campaigns that really drive awareness of measurement and evaluation within your organisation. The next point here is to really focus on AMEC-related initiatives. And this is really in your interest to really tie it back to the values of AMEC and the strategy that AMEC has as an industry organisation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. Second last point here is to utilise the supporting material to demonstrate your success. And I've got an example of how we did that last year. But really, the way that the award online system works is that it generates every entry to the judges in exactly the same format. Now that's really, really handy and it's very time efficient for judges. But what it means is that every entry looks the same as it comes out. So the only way to really stand out and demonstrate your success is with that supporting material. So I know that I was a judge in 2018, and I saw that some companies had not used supplementary material at all. And we've often considered it to be an afterthought of our entries, but it really is that one chance that you get to put colour into your entry and make it really stand out. The last point I have here is to just give it a go. I think that it's been every year that we have really said that we would not go in the Company of the Year entry, And every year, Nairi, to her credit, says, no, Carly, just spend a little bit of time, just put one in. We should give it a go. And, you know, she's right that you should give it a go. Sometimes we're too harsh on ourselves, and we think we know the things that we've done well, we know the things we could have done better. But if you're, you know, a small, mid-sized or large organisation, I encourage you to give it a go and tell your story. This slide here is really about highlighting the AMEC connection in our 2017 entry. I just mentioned before that it's important for you to show how your relationship and your membership with the industry is actually helping your business. And this is an excerpt from our 2017 entry for Company of the Year. And it was specifically a point that we used to highlight how our organisation had used technology and an investment in people to deliver insights and business intelligence. In this section, we have always focused on speaking about the training that we give to our analysts. We talk about the investment that we give and how most of that investment is in AMEC College. So this has been in our entries every year, and every year we update the judges with our progress to this goal. So our goal is for every team member to successfully complete their AMEC International Certificate in Measurement and Evaluation by 2017. So we were recording our success against that goal in the entries that we've put in. So that's a very, very concrete example of how you can use your internal training programs to actually answer the criteria. Make sure that you're including AMEC support of your people and the industry. This is actually a real slide from our Company of the Year entry from last year, and it's from our supporting materials. And a really important point about the supporting materials through the use of graphics and photos is that they give evidence to what we've claimed in the actual written criteria. So we spent a lot of time talking about how we had innovated, how we were re-engineering our business model through innovation, and that the 4 slides that you're allowed under the criteria were used to actually demonstrate how we had done that. So these 3 photos demonstrate our then CIO at the AWS conference in Las Vegas, and we're pulling out things that are unique to Isentia. So Isentia was the only Australian company to present at this global event attended by 30,000 people. We also pulled out evidence of our extension of our geographic footprint in our opening of our Taiwan office, and also our support of the AMEC Summit in Bangkok. So encourage you to use photos, bring your entry to life, and demonstrate the real success and your initiatives that you've had this year with photos and colour. And I think that you really start to tell the story about all of the hard work and all of the success that you've had. I'm now going to pass on to Nairi, and she's going to take us through some really great tips on how to actually really nail these client entry awards.
Okay, hi everyone. One of the favourite things that I get to do every year is help coordinate the AMEC entries across the whole company for Isentia. If you are thinking about doing that for the organisation that you work in, I highly recommend it. It's a really great way to get exposed to a lot of projects that you wouldn't necessarily get exposed to, really get into the nitty-gritty of what analysts are doing in a great way and how they're interacting with their clients. I'm going to focus on a few things that I think are really important when you're selecting a particular project to go into one of the categories. The first thing for me, and it's a bit of a life theme, it's something I teach to all my analysts on any project that they're working on, is everything needs a hook. Everything needs, when you're writing something, there has to be something that's interesting about it. So how you actually select the project is really, really crucial. I often thought this way when I was at university writing essays. I often thought about the fact that there was one person reading a lot of things, and how do you make yourself stand out in that massive pile of other pieces of work. So that's the way I tend to approach the entries as well, is you need to find something interesting that's going to stand out, and you need to tell it in a really compelling way. One of the ways to do that is to think about, over the past year, what is the project that has really had you thinking creatively, what's had you up at 2 a.m. and thinking, what else should I be doing? How do I make this better? And especially when you're writing award entries, passion is incredibly infectious. If you loved it, and especially if your client loved it, writing about it is so easy, and it translates into the entry really, really effectively. Also think about why it's unique. Why was it unique for you, and particularly why might it have been unique for your client? Did they use it in a particularly interesting way? Is it a really clear example of best practice? Did you innovate? Did you do something really, really new for you? And again, with this project selection, I like to think in terms of questions, and I really want every entry to be about answering a really particular question, and a really interesting question, so that ultimately a judge is going to pause and think, wow, that's a really interesting problem. So then they care about the solution and whether or not the client achieved what they wanted to achieve. The client, especially from a measurement company perspective, and certainly from an agency perspective as well, is so important that you include them on this awards journey with you. You really can't do it without them. You may think something's amazing, you know that your client thought it was amazing, but if you can't prove that they did something new, or they really changed behavior with that information, it becomes less compelling as an award entry. So you do need to know and include information about the specifics of how your client used all of that work, and especially how it had a direct impact on them reaching their goals. And it's particularly what I was mentioning before about changing behavior. I think that's really, really crucial, and ultimately it's what we're all kind of trying to achieve with the work that we do. So we've got really clear evidence of that that's going to make a really compelling case. Endorsements are incredibly crucial. So not only knowing what they did with it and proving that, having a really clear endorsement from a client that all of those things are accurate and happened, but also how much they loved it as well. And this process shouldn't be hard. Ultimately, if you've done really great work with a client, hopefully they always want to endorse you and use really lovely emotive language about you. But don't underestimate the power of having them explain the impact of your research in their own words. And always position it with them very early on. One of the reasons why you need to allow a good chunk of time for these entries is often that's the part that can take time, is making sure that clients are okay with the entry process, they understand it, they understand the impact of what might happen should you be shortlisted or should you win an award. They understand what that might mean for them, and make sure that they're across how that looks, and take them on that journey with you as soon as you might be thinking that this could be a great entry. Outcomes and evidence, I think, as Carly was mentioning, is incredibly important for the individual project work as well. But be smart about how you structure them. You want to really focus on the narrative and telling the story of the question that you're trying to answer, why that question is important, and how you were successful in that. And the success is really around that kind of client impact. So don't get too bogged down in detail that doesn't advance the story. So anything that's specifically about timelines or methodologies or specific data techniques, unless that's really specific to the category that you're entering, because too much technical detail can kind of bog down the flow of that entry. You want to make sure that you're telling a really great, coherent story. And you always let the client speak for themselves. Don't try to speak for them or rewrite them. Definitely use their language. I'm a big fan of just directly quoting them, or having them having kind of photographic evidence of something that they've done with the information. And make it really easy for the judges to know how exactly your supporting materials link to the key points. I think we're all really used to seeing our own information all the time, that you forget what it might be like for someone on the outside to see to see what it all looks like and what it all means. So be very clear in the entry about which supporting materials link to which key point, or being really, really clear about how you structure it around the themes and the different spaces in the entry to exactly link to those supporting materials. And be really creative with those supporting materials as well. You don't necessarily want to only provide charts or pieces of reports or bits of data. You want to be able to really tell that kind of secondary supportive story as well. And I think especially when campaigns can be so interesting and fascinating, and companies themselves can be so interesting and fascinating, don't forget that you are talking about evaluation and measurement. So don't get too distracted by the specifics of the campaign unless they are in some way directly informed and impacted by the evaluation and the measurement. I'm going to talk through one of my personal favourites in the last few years, which was a piece of work that we did for the New Zealand Olympic Committee on gender representation in the Rio Olympics. And it's also quite nice because I'm currently starting to gear up with them for the 2020 Olympics. So it's nice and timely in that fashion. So this one won a Gold Award in 2017 for Most Impactful Client Recommendations, which has always been one of my favourites. So the hook for this one was that obviously, I mean, gender representation in the Olympics is inherently fascinating. I think it already sounds interesting, but the scale of it was also massive. It wasn't something that the Olympic Committee had done before. It wasn't something that we'd actually done before either. It was actually analysing a giant amount of content in great contextual detail. And it was unlike the size of any other project that we'd done before. So that was a particularly great hook. And the other part was the amount of investment, not monetary investment, but kind of emotional investment from the client. Gender representation and the representation of women in sport is such a passion of the New Zealand Olympic Committee. They've been recognised by the IOC for their work in the area. It's very central and very core to what they do, and they were never going to undertake research that wasn't going to directly impact how they continued on that cause. So it was very clearly a research partnership from, that should say outset, not outside, but there you go. The client wanted to support us to be really successful and to create research that would definitely attract attention. So they wanted to be able to create discussion and be able to introduce this research to as many people as they could. And I think one of the things that is particularly compelling about that entry is that while this piece of research was great and amazing and very, very detailed and gave them great insight, it's not necessarily the end of the project. There was always very clear next steps about what we were involved in kind of designing and then helping them to implement the next steps. We found in that project that there is some level of inherent bias into how female athletes are framed. So creating a specific action plan around that was really fascinating. I spent a lot of time with them and workshopping with journalists around how do you change behaviour in a newsroom? How can you change an inherent bias? Is it about not focusing on journalists that are writing about sport now? Is it about journalists that are writing in the future? So that was definitely something that was really, really, really fascinating. And then being involved in helping them relay the findings to the IOC and showing an organisation as large as the International Olympic Committee exactly how valuable it is to have this type of measurement structure in place and how they could learn from it and where else they could potentially replicate it. So just to quickly summarise, for the project and client entries, it's really important to clearly demonstrate why this project is your best work. Always tell a great story. Think about that audience, think about the judges and what's going to be interesting and what's going to surprise them. Know all of your key points, make sure you support them with as much supplementary data as you can, but be creative about it. Give yourself time. is one of the ones that we're all terrible at, and I'm definitely guilty of it. But at the same time, the way that I think about projects and the way that I think about what makes a good AMEC Award entry are quite similar, and it's very long term. So it's something I'm always thinking about in a weird way. I'm constantly thinking about, well, this is really interesting. That's a quirky question. Maybe this would make a great entry. And I'm constantly thinking about that throughout the year, and then gathering kind of feedback on other projects that people have found really interesting, things they've enjoyed working on. So while the actual time writing an entry might not be as long as you want it to be, all of that pre-thinking is really important. So making sure that you're selecting the right entry in the first place is really important. And making sure that you use all of the resources available to you. So make sure that you get your teams involved, speak to the rest of your business about things that they liked or they found interesting. We find it's a great thing to talk to our analysts about and have it in as part of their kind of core function and part of their annual reviews, and making sure that they're constantly thinking about how would I display what my best work is. Right, I'm just going to flip back to Carly for a second, who has a bit of experience as an AMEC judge.
Thank you, Nari. Thank you. I'm going to draw on the wisdom and expertise of two absolute industry experts, which is Jim McNamara and Marion McDonald. They have both kindly and donated their time to webinars like this in the past, and they have both been AMEC judges for many years, but also chaired the process of the AMEC Awards, so run that whole process. So I wanted to draw on some top tips that they've shared with us in the past, over the past few years. And just a really simple things, but when you're working quickly and when you're trying to fit everything into your day, these things can be forgotten a lot along the way. So the first point is to really be concise and drop the jargon. So any cliches or bold statements that you actually can't back up with evidence, best to leave them out, because the judges will, they're looking at a lot of entries for one single category, up to say 14 to 16 entries per category. And any claims that aren't validated or don't have evidence do stick out to be just big calls that aren't really hitting the mark. So think about your language, use it carefully, and don't use jargon. As Nari has pointed out, really focus on the outcomes and impact of your work. That's really the essence of that. The client impact, demonstrating outcomes and impact for your client, is at the heart of what AMEC is about. So really try and spend a lot of time making sure that those sections are absolutely perfect. The third point here is one that I didn't really think about too much until Marion mentioned it a few years ago. And it's a really important point. You need to provide local or regional context where it adds value and weight to your entry. So the judges come from many different regions of the world, many different countries. They may not automatically know about the differences between different currencies. They may also not know abbreviations or those sorts of things. So provide that context where you need to. So if it's a massive impact in dollar terms, convert that into pounds, convert that into euros, something like that, so that you're really giving a judge an international sense of the context of why that's important. The next point here is to make the most of the supplementary material slides. And as I've mentioned with the Company of the Year Awards earlier on, this is your opportunity to appeal to the judges with great examples and visuals. It's your one shot to really stand out. And here, it's really about telling a story. It's not just using the charts from the report. That's helpful, obviously, to demonstrate it, but if you can really demonstrate impact with infographics, charts, and photographs or things like that, it really does just give the judges such a reason to highlight your work. Include a supporting quote from your client. Really, really important, and Nari has discussed that relationship is one of the most important aspects for success in the awards. But you really do have to make sure that quote is specific to the value of the work. And I know with a number of our entries that we've had in the past, the client will send back a very generic, we love the work that you do, or we love working with you, you're so responsive, you offer great service. And those types of things can be powerful on a corporate website, but for an award entry, you really need to get your client to articulate the value of that actual work. It's hard to do sometimes, but it actually is worth it, and nothing actually tells a story than that third-party endorsement from the client in their own words. Finally here, and this is again one of Marion's suggestions and something that we've found incredibly important to our process here, is to set up an internal system of review before you enter it. So behind the scenes, we will do everything in a Word document. We won't just go straight into the online web tool to enter it. We will have editors edit our text so that there's no spelling mistakes. We will have them try and look out for things that the judges will find that we haven't backed up properly, that need more evidence, or those local things that need a little bit of context. Set up an internal system review so that you almost have an internal AMEC Awards before you put those submissions in, because that testing and that rigor and that questioning over the entries will only make them stronger, and they'll only be addressing things that a judge will think of as soon as they open the award. So that's been probably one of the things that's helped us the most over the last few years, which is to set up an internal committee of people that, I guess, try and pick the entries a little bit to actually strengthen their weaknesses and make sure that we're really putting our best foot forward. So a really great suggestion from Marion McDonald. Finally, I'd like to encourage everyone to spend as much time as they can on the website. This is a really great resource. There's not only the important details you know from deadlines to the entry tool, to all of the entry criteria you need to meet for the AMEC Awards, but you've also got really fantastic case studies of awards, case studies that have won previous awards. So it's such a wonderful thing that AMEC members do, which is to open up their work and their entries for other people in coming years to have a look at. So you can learn, as we have, from the wonderful entries that get published on the website every year. So please make the most of the resources that are free and available to you for your own entries. Finally, thank you for listening to us today. We wish you the very best this year. We hope it's your year, and we just encourage you to have a go. We have always just had a go in some of the categories, and it really does pay off to be part of something so special on the night and to also celebrate combined success. So best wishes, and thank you for listening today.